Morning everybody, it's Phil Smith from Snow at Ski Courses here. Sorry about the slight delay, as always we had some technical issues. I've been talking for 5 minutes. We've not even been connected to the internet. So a great start for our first ever webinar, but hopefully things will get better. I think we're on now. It should be playing. As far as I can see, we are live, which is absolutely amazing. It's great to be here, so welcome everybody that has tuned in, everybody from the UK, everybody from France, anywhere else all over the world hopefully. It's our first webinar and we're going to be talking about skiing open, which is a particular passion of ours. Everybody been on our courses knows that. You may have not been on our courses, but you'll see on our website we have blogs written on skiing open. We're talking about it all the time. We have videos about it. So here I am to talk about it. So grab yourself a coffee, relax, and here we go. Can you see who's tuned in? Welcome everybody. We have a lot of people from all over the world listening. So skiing open. First of all, I suppose I should start off by explaining what we actually mean by skiing open. And it's better to put that in the context of sport in general. What we call open sports and closed sports. We can use a continuum, a spectrum of sports where one end we have open sports and at the other end we have closed sports. So just to briefly explain if you're not sure what that means, but open sports are where things are changing all the time. Nothing is ever the same. Every minute, every second, every hour you're participating in that sport, things are changing, the environment's changing. That's just not the environment. It could be the weather, it could be the track, it could be the obstacles, it could be the other players. So often when we talk about open sports where the environment's changing, most people think of surfing, where every wave is different. Windsurfing, where the wind is changing all the time. Sailing, climbing, outdoor climbing, but it's also all team sports. Every team sport is open because you have no idea what's going to happen to your team and the other members of the other team. So football, rugby, they're all open. In some of those sports there's more closed aspects, like a penalty in football is fairly closed, but open play. So we're talking about open play here, where everybody's moving around and things are changing all the time. And then we go to the other extreme, the other end of the spectrum of sports, which is closed. Closed sports are where things are the same. They don't change, such as running in lanes, 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters. Once you get to 800 meters and the runners start to move around, it becomes a bit more open. But running in lanes is a very closed sport. Swimming in lanes, most athletic events, high jump, long jump, although there are some elements of those sports that are open, it's pretty much the same all the time. It's the same all the time. Now some of these sports are very, very skillful. Some closed sports are incredibly skillful. So I'm not here to say that open sport is better than closed sport. It's not. I love closed sports. I absolutely love them. I love swimming in lanes. I love the technical aspects of a closed sport. So we're not pitching open sport against closed sport. We're explaining the difference. Some highly technical closed sports will be sports like figure skating on ice, high diving. Incredibly technical, but very closed. Now the key difference between open and closed, there's two key differences that we absolutely have to link into. One is that in open sport, the movement patterns are always changing. There is no start and finish to a movement pattern. You start off in football, for example, the referee blows the whistle to kick off and everybody goes. And everything is moving and changing and it's constantly adapting all the time. There's no start and finish. The finish is when the referee blows the whistle again. And in between start and finish, anything can happen. So that's open sport. Closed sport, the movement patterns, there's a definite start and finish to the movement pattern. So if you take high diving, you know, there will be a start to the first rotation, there will be a finish to the last rotation. And those movements are repetitive, very, very repetitive. You know, a triple somersault in high diving is a triple somersault. Okay, you can modify it, you can change it slightly, but it's clearly a triple somersault. Butterfly stroke in swimming is butterfly, breaststroke is breaststroke, front crawl is front crawl, backstroke is backstroke. You can't really confuse. You know, there's not much confusion. If somebody's doing a breaststroke, people don't sit around and think, is that a breaststroke or a front crawl? It's clearly a breaststroke. So you can see in closed sport, the movement patterns are very similar and very repetitive. Highly skilled, they can be, as in all sports, but repetitive, and there's a start and a finish to the movement pattern. The other thing is what's going on up here in your mind, your decision making. In open sport, decision making is instantaneous because you never know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. It's changing all the time. Whereas in closed sport, nothing is going to affect your performance, so you can plan ahead. So often in closed sports, movement patterns are pre-planned, whereas in open sports, they're instantaneous. You have to change. Oh, I've got my coffee arrived. Fantastic. Here we go. And with the Carrick Smith Boys coffee warmer, Penguin coffee warmer, which I can talk about another time. So back to the mindset. So instantaneous decision making. So that's the difference, those key things. Open sport, changing all the time. Start and finish to the movement pattern. Movement patterns are repetitive, and decision making is in advance. It's ahead of what you're doing. Open sports, everything's changing all the time. So let's talk about skiing. Now, when we ask our clients, or our guests, the people that are skiing with us, what they think all mountain skiing is, or even just skiing, we're in the business of all mountain skiing, but even skiing, 100% would say skiing is an open sport. 100%. Every client. I've never yet had a skier, a guest, a client turn to me and say skiing is a closed sport. We know it's not. It's obvious. It's snowing. The snow's changing all the time. Every day we go out, the weather's different. The pistes are changing all the time. The texture of the snow. One day we go out, it's icy. It's been pisted. It's perfect conditions. By the afternoon, it's bumped up. So every client says to us, skiing is an open sport. However, and this is the key, when we ask the people that we ski with for the first time, what is their perception of how they have learned to ski, more or less everybody, not everybody, but more or less everybody says closed. They've learned closed, but they are fully aware, or they believe, that skiing is an open activity. So we've got a bit of an issue here. Learning closed and performing in an open environment. Now, why is that? We've asked ourselves many times why people are learning closed in the early stages of skiing. And it's fairly obvious because the mountain, the authorities, the ski schools, the piste patrol tend to close things down in the early stages of skiing. Nursery slopes are well pisted. They're always the first to be pisted whenever there's been snow. It's flat, it's perfect conditions. I've never seen a mogul slope on a nursery slope. It doesn't exist. It's flat, it's perfectly groomed. Blue runs are often pisted. Again, very occasionally they get left, but not very often. They're mostly well pisted. Red runs, now here's the key change in the red runs, because red runs you can arrive one day to go skiing. Some of the red runs will be pisted and some won't. So it starts to change at the red run stage. Okay. And then black runs. Now black runs pisted sometimes, but not that regularly. Maybe once every 3 days, once every 4 days. Some black runs just don't get pisted, so they're just mogul fields all the time. So you can see it changes from a relatively closed, I won't say closed because the weather's changing all the time, but a relatively closed environment to begin with. Nursery slopes, blue runs, easy reds, and then it becomes open, difficult reds and blacks, and then into the off-piste. Now the interesting thing is, even when you venture into the off-piste, you can have what we call closed off-piste, and you can have open off-piste. Closed off-piste, wonderful. It's snowed, perfect powder, no wind, blue sky, and everybody can just ski with a fairly repetitive movement pattern, no problem at all. So off-piste can be relatively closed, but it can also be very open. The wind is blowing, the terrain is changing, we've got rocks, we've got trees, we've got other skiers, we've got tracks, the snow's been around for a few days, so then it becomes open again. So we do get quite a lot of skiers that push it past the red run and the black run stage, move into off-piste, but are still relatively closed in the way that they approach the mountain, which means they can ski well in off-piste providing the conditions are fairly consistent. But as the conditions start to become more varied, then they start to struggle. So there's a key point here, a couple of key points that people often arrive at, and one is what we call the intermediate plateau. Now the intermediate plateau is around the difficult red run stage, and I do believe we might be the only company, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll be pleased to hear lots of other people saying that they're doing the same thing, but the intermediate plateau is where closed techniques meet an open environment. Closed techniques meet an open environment. Now that is absolutely key, and I can list the types of terrain or snow texture that people struggle with. Bumps, ice, narrow slopes, crowded slopes, poor visibility, fresh snow, wind slab, all these things where the environment begins to change. So the intermediate plateau, where most people arrive at, is at the red run stage. But if you're quite gung-ho, quite sporty and active, you can normally push through that and you can get quite far. But at some point there will come a time where you have to go open in order to cope with the whole mountain environment. So that's a bit of history of open and closed. And we've spoken about why skiing has this, why people often learn closed but then move into an open environment because of the way the mountain is prepared, nursery slopes, blue runs, etc., etc. Let's talk a little bit about our journey and how we got involved with open skiing. What I will say before going on to that is skiing open is nothing new. I'd love to say it's our idea. I'd love to say open skills and open sports was our idea. It wasn't. It's been around for a long, long, long time. In fact, in skiing, I was a young ski instructor coming through various organisations learning to ski, and there was one particular gentleman who I should mention, and his name is John Shedden. And John Shedden was the first person that I came across that really got involved in what we now call skill-based skiing, and what he called skill-based skiing, which was developing skills for an open environment. John Shedden headed up the English Ski Council, which is now called Snow Sports England. So if you're involved in that, you'll know about John Shedden. If you don't know who John Shedden is, grab his book, Skillful Skiing. It was written a long, long time ago, and to this day is still, in my opinion, one of the best books ever written on skiing, especially skillful skiing. So John Shedden kicked off. The Americans had a very skill-based system in place. The Canadians talked about skill-based system, and I was heavily involved with Basie, and we brought skill-based system into Basie. Okay, so it's been around for a long, long time. The reason why we had to really take it on board is because once we started Snowworks ski courses, we realised that we could not compete with ski schools, and we didn't want to compete with ski schools. They do a fantastic job. What we wanted to do is we wanted to really hit that intermediate plateau and beyond. So taking people on a journey from difficult red runs through to black runs, through to coping with ice, bumps, bad visibility, narrow slopes, into the off-piste, and then once you're into the off-piste, the open journey is never ending. It's never ending. Just goes on and on and on, and it's absolutely fantastic. So we had to get into open skills. We recognised fairly early on that what we were teaching was not working for our client base and the market that we were moving into. Now I'm going back quite a long time here. It wasn't working, and I've got some wonderful stories that really, you know, in life you have moments that change you, and it could be just a split second, 1 hour, it could be a day. We'll all remember those moments where what happens up here changes forever. And I had a few of those light bulb moments in our early days of Snowworks. And in fact, that was the ski company then, which was before Snowworks. We were running Chalet holidays, and we had a lot of guests coming out, and we were offering ski instruction. And this particular week, we had a bumps course running. We must have had about 30 to 40 skiers that had signed up for these bumps courses. So we're talking, I can't remember, 30 years ago. It must be 30 years ago. And in those days, I don't know if you remember those days, in ski school, you got everybody together and you had the famous ski off, where everybody skied down one at a time and you watched them and then split them into groups. And the ski off was normally done on relatively easy flat terrain so everybody can manage. And then just on what you saw, your opinion of how people skied, you split them into groups. And I remember I think there was 4 of us. There was myself, Dave Peake, who was working for us at the time, Dave Renouf, if anybody remembers Dave Renouf, he's now involved with Basie, and Sally Chapman, who runs her own ski company as well. So there was the 4 of us, and we were doing the famous ski off. So we had everybody at the top, and people were skiing down the best they could, and we were splitting them into groups. Okay, Dave, Sally, me, Sally, Dave. And I remember these 2 lads that skied down. I even remember their names to this day, Philip and Simon. It was Philip and Simon. I remember their names. It had such an impact on me. They skied down and they were awful, in my viewpoint. Awful. They did everything you weren't meant to do. They skied down with their feet clamped together, swiveling the tails from side to side, bolt upright, leaning slightly back, their arms hanging down by the side, their shoulders swinging, and to top it they had their coats undone, swinging around in the wind. It was an absolute shambles. Everything that I had trained to look at as a ski instructor was not there. So you can imagine what happened. Bottom group. His brother came down, bottom group. The 2 of them went straight into the bottom group. They did nothing right. We went off. I had the top group and I had people training for their ski instructor exams, and the 2 Daves and Sally went off their groups. At the end of that first day, I can't remember which instructor it was, but one of the instructors came back and said, "Oh, Philip and Simon, you put them into the bottom group. They're going to have to go up." I said, No, I saw them ski. They can't go up. They just can't go up. He said, "No, they're much too good for my group." I said, "Are you sure?" Yep. Up they went into the second group up. End of day 2. That instructor came back. "Philip and Simon, they're too good for my group." I saw them ski. They did nothing right. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely sure." Up they went into the 3rd group. End of the 3rd day, that instructor came to me. "Philip and Simon are going to have to go up." I said, "Hold on a minute. The next group is my group. I'm training people for their it's their Basie level 1, which is now the equivalent to ISTD, their top level bumps. I've got a group of top level bump skiers." I said, "They can't come with me." And the instructor that was taking group 2 said, "They're going to have to come with you, Phil." I said, "Okay, let's give it a shot." They came with me and they were the best in my group. And they still skied with their legs clamped together, sitting back, swinging their tails from side to side, arms everywhere, coats undone. And they were still the fastest down the moguls. So that gets you thinking, hang on a minute, what are these guys doing that I haven't been trained to coach? They're doing everything against what I've trained. Okay, and so we began to start to change how we were looking at skiing. We didn't have this model that ski instruction at that time was based on. A model of performance which you're trained to look at and then teach. These guys did things totally differently. That was one point which sticks up here. And then a couple of years later, there was another point where, again, I remember it vividly, I jumped into a cable car or a telecabin with somebody who was running a ski instructor's course. I knew they had a good group of local seasonaires. I said, "How's the course running?" It was exactly the same as that episode with Philip and Simon that I had. "Terrible," he said to me. "Terrible." I said, "What, your group's terrible?" "Ah, terrible skiers." And I knew some of them. I knew that they were seasonaires. I said to the other instructor, I said, "What, they can't ski?" "Oh, they can ski. They can ski everywhere, but they're just terrible." So you can see there's another conflict there. How can you ski everywhere and be a terrible skier? It's not possible. So again, another moment which helps shape our future at Snowworks. How can these skiers that are defying what we're teaching ski so well? And this just kept on going on and on and on. So we had to start to adapt everything we were doing. We approached skiing in a much more open way. We moved away from images, looking at a skier and giving our view on how well that skier skied. And we moved into another area which we now call judged and measured. Now, judged and measured, there are sports which are judged. Judging is somebody's opinion of how somebody skis. And there are sports which are measured. And measured is by the time. And at Snowworks, not only do we develop open skills for open environments, okay, we talk about measured performance. Okay, can you go where you want to? Can you ski at the speed that you wish to? Can you slow down at will? Can you speed up at will? Okay. Can you ski off-piste? Can you take a fast line, etc., etc.? All measured, and we try to move away from giving an opinion. Now, this is absolutely key because a lot of skiers out there are very concerned about how they look, not about how they ski, which is crazy, isn't it? It's one of the only sports I know that where people are skiing around the mountain worried about what they look like. Whereas what we should be thinking about is how well we are skiing, how we're coping with the conditions. How well do we actually ski? Once you move your mindset away from what you look like to how well you ski, everything opens up. Everything opens up. You start to become an open skier. Okay, so that's a bit about our journey, open sport. Now, if you're still thinking, I'm not too sure what Phil's talking about here, just think about me just walking around here. Okay, this is fairly open. It's an open skill. If I start to move a bit more rapidly, you can see every movement is changing all the time. Every single movement. I can grab one thing, just grab a sip of coffee, and I'll be back in a moment. Skills. Here I've got a post, so I could do this for how long? Until a movement is the same as the previous movement. I could do it forever, and every movement would be different. Walking around the house, going shopping, going out on your bicycle, they're all open skills. Nothing is ever the same. Every time you get up from your seat and walk into the kitchen, open skills. Every time you go shopping, open skills. Now, try to describe how you would walk through a crowded bar carrying a tray of drinks. It's impossible. You can't do it. You cannot describe it. And after somebody has done it, try to get them to do the same thing again. It's impossible. Everybody would have moved. There might be some more drink on the floor. The floor's a bit slipperier. So it's all different every time you do it. And that's what skiing's like. So the first thing about going open, we have to stop trying to describe skiing. We have to stop it. We have to go skills-based, what we call skills-based. And developing skills is completely different to developing what we would call a maneuver. Okay, a maneuver. Now, a maneuver can be described very accurately. Like I already mentioned this in swimming: front crawl, breaststroke, backstroke. You can absolutely describe it. But now let's take swimming in lanes and put those swimmers in to a water polo contest. Is it backstroke? Is it front crawl? Is it butterfly? Is it breaststroke? They're all jumbled together. Everything is jumbled together. So we have skills that we use. So to go open, you have to become skills-based. And that means you develop skills that you can adjust and use. Each one of these skills is infinitely variable in itself. So you've got hundreds of skills. We have three main skills: what we call twisting, pushing, edging, what some people call control of rotation, pressure control, and edge control. So they are three skills. Each one of those, twisting is infinitely variable, edging is infinitely variable, pressure control or pushing is infinitely variable. And the way those three skills mix together are infinitely variable. So you have to learn skills which you can vary, and then you adapt them to the mountain. So that's the key behind going open. Learning skills which are variable. You've got psychological skills, you've got physical skills, you've got tactical skills, and you've got technical skills. So there's hundreds and hundreds of skills. Now, what we've done at Snowworks to help people in this journey, we've tried to describe skiing, how we would train to ski and apply our skills in the mountain to other sports. like football, for example. Now, anybody that's done football or netball or volleyball or any other sport, or even water polo, anything, often the session starts with learning some skills. So if you go football training, the first hour is often spent skills-based, dribbling, tackling, passing, keepy-ups, whatever it happens to be. It's a skills-based session. And at the end of an hour or so, the coach often says, "Shall we have a game?" Now, from that moment, everybody changes their mindset into the game. They go into a game and they start playing the game. And they don't think that the game is repeating the skills that they've just been practicing. They're immediately in a game mode. Now, the issue that we have in skiing is we have people practicing skills and thinking that's skiing, and it's not. You've got to play the game. And playing the game is completely different to learning a skill. Okay, you learn the skill and then you go and use it to play the game. You go skiing and you cope with the mountain as it comes towards you. You deal with the mountain. Now, if you think skiing is repeating a skill that you've learned in a training session somewhere, you're going to come unstuck. Like, it's all over. We hear it everywhere. You know, stand up to start a turn, sink down, face your shoulders down the hill, plant your pole here, flex here, extend here. So people are practicing these set movements only to find when they're in the game, bumps, ice, bad visibility, soft snow, narrow paths, crowded slopes, it's not working. And it will never work. It will never work until you make the step into playing the game. And that's what we call going open. So I hope that describes what we're trying to put across here. Now, we've got loads of blogs written on Skiing Open. We've got loads of stuff on our website about Skiing Open. So have a nose around, have a read about it. I'm going to stop here because I said half an hour. I've been going for about half an hour. And I hope that sort of introduces you to the concept of going open. The best way to think about going open is first start to think of sports. Are they open or closed? Okay, go through in your own mind what sports are open, what sports are closed, what sports have a combination between open and closed. Then think of your perception of skiing. Is your perception of skiing a dynamic activity where you're changing all the time? Or is your perception of skiing a fairly closed sport where you're making the same movement pattern all the time? And then think about the mountain environment. Think about how to cope with ice, bumps, slush, off-piste, narrow slopes, where the mountain becomes variable. And are you adapting to those changes? If you're not, you're going to struggle. Okay, so everybody at some point in their skiing career has to go open. Now, you can get away with it quite a lot, as I said before, just through brute force and having a gung-ho attitude. You can possibly push through with a fairly closed mindset and a fairly closed technique. But one day you're going to have to go open. So everybody go open at some point in your skiing career if you haven't already. Now, I did say when I put the post up on our site earlier on that there is a reason that all our instructors have a smile on their face every day they go out skiing, and that's because they love skiing open. Now, can you imagine when you put your skis on, every time you change direction it's a new experience, every turn is a new experience, every run is a new experience. Wow, you're going to have a smile on your face without a doubt, because every day is a new journey. Where am I going to ski? What am I going to do? It's an amazing feeling. People often say to myself, don't you get bored with this? Don't you get bored ski teaching? No, not in the slightest, because every time we're at the top of that mountain, every time we push off, it's a new experience. And that is what going open does. It puts a smile on your face all the time, whatever the terrain, whatever the snow conditions, whatever the weather, you'll have a smile on your face. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I won't go on any longer. That's been long enough. Hope you enjoyed that. Fire away with any questions, post any questions you might have. Go on to our site, have a look at all our blogs about skiing open. If you haven't started the journey, open journey yet, please do so. It's absolutely wonderful, and you will be skiing around. If you're not already, you'll be skiing around with a smile on your face every day, no matter what the weather. Thanks for joining me.